Hello everyone, so welcome back to another video, and this is going to be covering the events that have unfolded, the spoiler events that have unfolded in episode 19 of Gundam Build Divers Re-Rise. It's also going to try and set out a plausible theory as to what's going on here, kind of a speculation video. So this is about Sura, Mirror Sura, and Eve, and this covers Build Divers and Build Divers Re-Rise. We're up to episode 19 of Re-Rise at the moment, and I had to go back and watch episode 7 and episode 17 of Build Divers because they include very, very small details that you'll obviously need for this speculation. So, in episode 7 of Build Divers, we see Sura, the Sura that then becomes part of Build Divers and hangs out with Riku and co for the entire season. She is given a small pendant as part of the reward for the Force battle by Riku. So we know, or we can make a distinction between Sura and any other character that looks like her because of that pendant, because she wears it for the rest of the show. So then we move to episode 17, where we get the introduction of Mirror Sura, which is a buggy version of Sura created by all the growth that she has in GBN, causing, lots of errors. And one of those bugs is Mirror Sura. Mirror Sura is basically just Sura, but palette swapped. The difference being that she doesn't have the pendant on her chest. And in episode 17 of Build Divers, Mirror Sura is dismissed by normal Sura after being asked who she is, by a touch of her hand, seemingly getting rid of her, almost like she's trying to cover up the fact that, there's bugs that are slowly appearing around her. And I think this is before the episode where they have a race as well, where the bugs are becoming more prevalent as Sura grows. So we don't see Mirror Sura after that, except this new episode of Re-Rise. This new episode of Re-Rise, I've had to, like I say, think over, but I actually think I've got this down now. In this one, we get to see a lot of Hiroto and Eve's backstory, in fact, more or less the entirety of it. The only thing we don't see is Hiroto's choice at the end as to what happens with Eve. We get to see the building of the core Gundam, the building of the armor sets, and the fact that Eve was so pivotal into creating all of this stuff. She inspired Hiroto, and as a result, Hiroto grew. But Eve has met both Sura and Mirror Sura in GBN at some point when it was either failing or when they've gone into like this buggy area. It's a weird way to describe it, but it looks like the system falling apart. It's a red area that has holes in it. It almost seems like an area that's falling apart, and anything can kind of come and go in between there. We don't really know how L-divers interact with each other properly at this point, so it's possible that this is inside the system and they just have contact with each other incredibly easily. But Eve has met both Mirror Sura and Sura in GBN, and we can confirm this using the pictures from episode 7 and 17 of Build Divers compared to the sequence where Eve is in with them in the show now, because when Eve is first shown meeting Sura doesn't have the pendant on, and she gets that as early as episode 7, meaning that it's still gonna be like a copy of Sura that she's met that's buggy, and she absorbs, or it looks like she absorbs Mirror Sura at one point. She shields her from the system falling apart, and then she seems to either absorb her or seems to fix the problem that's wrong with her, seemingly absorbing the errors. It could be, instead of being Mirror Sura completely, that it's just normal Sura suffering from bugs before episode 7. But then what happens is we see Eve do this once more with the version of Sura that doesn't have the pendant, and then the final version is Sura with the pendant, because it happens 3 times over this episode. And on the 3rd time is where something interesting happens. So my theory here is that Sarah and Eve have been around for a similar amount of time. It's just that apparently Sarah was reported as the first L-diver and the one to cause most of the system problems. It's entirely possible, looking at this, that Eve has somehow grown in a relatively similar time frame. And every time Sarah has had problems with herself when she's been causing bugs over the course of her growth, what's happened is she's created a buggy version of herself as a way to purge the buggy data while still remaining herself. And the mirror version would somehow meet Eve in what appears to be the system falling apart, and over Eve would shield Mirror Sarah from harm and then absorb her to stop the system from completely falling apart, as a result taking some of the strain onto herself. This all comes to a critical point when she does it with the real Sarah with the pendant on, now suffering from lots of errors due to her growth. And again, we can confirm this being proper Sarah by just the pendant alone. But after absorbing her, the errors from the real version overload and stress her out, and she begins to suffer from errors herself as a result, or more critical ones. And when everyone is tasked to get rid of Sarah to save GBN, Eve realizes what's happened and asks Hiroto to erase her, because if her and Sarah both get erased, then it'll save all of GBN, and the system won't be overloaded. So I definitely think that seems plausible. I'm not too sure about the whole mirror version and the whole way that it's dealt with, because of how vague episode 17 of the original Build Divers is, but it gives us our first glimpse of like a buggy version of Sarah. All I can think of is, if it isn't Mirror Sarah that is constantly being purged and then sent into the system, and Eve meeting her and being sort of like an antivirus and taking the strain on herself, then it might be the real one before she gets the pendant. There's no actual time frame on this. But it seems like until episode 7, there's only a few instances of the system being buggy, and they're mainly caused by brake decals. So it makes more sense that maybe one of these times was actual Sarah without the pendant, and then afterwards the final one definitely is, which causes Eve to sort of crack and suffer critical errors as a result. Anyway, that's just my theory and speculation. I hope that it's true, just so I can call it and be like, yep, I knew it. But even if it isn't, this is a really neat turnaround, and it kind of makes me look at Build Divers a little bit better. It could be that they wrote this afterwards. They didn't actually mean to set this up, and they wrote it afterwards as a way of kind of trying to make up for how pretty dull Build Divers was. But I'd like to think that they've kind of had this planned and slowly unraveled it over the course of both of these stories to kind of make this one interconnecting story that is just a lot better overall. Anyway, what do you guys think? I'll see you in the comments section, and I'll see you on the next one. So until then, bye!